Okay, so now that we are ready to start programming, we've included the dependencies of Kafka and the logging, we can start writing our first producer. So there are 3 steps to start our producer. So the first thing is to create producer properties. And by having the double slash is a comment in Java, in case you don't know. Then we create the producer, and then we send data. Okay, so this is all the steps we're going to implement so far. So the first thing is to create producer properties. So we create properties, we press tab key, which imports java.util.properties, and we can just call them properties equals new properties. Okay, so we create a new properties object. Now we need to add properties in there, but we're not sure yet what to include. And so I'll give them to you, but I want you to know how to find them as well. The way to do this is to go to Kafka documentation. And you have to always, in your Kafka exploration, to refer to the Kafka documentation. And so if I scroll down and go all the way to producer configs, this is where we're going to get our configuration. And so we get a list of configuration we need to provide to Kafka. The first one we have to provide is a key serializer. The second one is a value serializer. And then we have Axe, and then we have Bootstrap servers, and so on. So we're just going to do the required one. So the first one is Bootstrap servers. So we'll do properties.setProperty bootstrap.servers, and the value is going to be 127.001.9092. So this is the Kafka address that you have. Okay, this is the Bootstrap servers. So you can definitely make a variable out of this. For example, you can say string bootstrap servers equals all this. Okay, I'll put this at the very top. And then at the end, bootstrap servers. Okay, fairly easy. Now the second thing we have to create is the key and the value serializer. So properties.setProperty key.serializer, and then we have to put something here, and then properties.setProperty value.serializer, and we have to set something here. So just a word before we go ahead. Key serializer and value serializer basically help the producer know what type of value you're sending to Kafka and how this should be serialized to bytes. Because Kafka will convert whatever we send, the Kafka client will convert whatever we send to Kafka into bytes, zeros and ones. And so for our case, we're going to send strings, just like we did in the console producer. So we need a string serializer for the key and a string serializer for the value. So how do we find this? Well, Kafka has a bunch of serializers ready for us. So we type string serializer, and as you can see, it is being hinted at me. If it's not hinted at you, it's because you haven't imported Kafka correctly, so get back to the previous lecture. So string serializer, I press tab dot class dot get name. So basically we're saying the value of key serializer is going to be a string serializer, get me the class, get me the name. So this is it. And then for value serializer, we'll do the same thing, string serializer tab dot class dot get name. And so here we go, we have our 3 properties. Now there is something you can do better. Setting these properties like this was the old way. This was the way of hard coding. As you can see, we hard code the properties on the left-hand side, like these 2 and the bootstrap servers, and then we give them a value. So this is good, right? But there's a better way now to have it a clearer code, and it's called producer config. You see producer config, which is part of org.apache.kafka.clients.producer, and I click on tab, and then we click on dot, and here we have all the Kafka properties hard-coded for us. So you can look through the list in here, but we are looking at bootstrap servers, so I'll write bootstrap servers config, and press tab. And now we have a better way. If we jump to the source, so we press command and then jump to the source, we can see that it is a public static final string bootstrap servers config equals bootstrap servers. So this looks good. This is just a better way to code in Kafka and make sure you're not making any typos in this thing. For the key serializer, same thing, producer config dot key serializer class config. And then finally, for the value serializer, producer config dot value serializer config. So all of this looks good. And now we can move on to the next stage. So the next stage is to create the producer. Now to create a producer, you're going to create a Kafka producer class. We press tab, and each time you press tab, it just gives you the import on the top. So Kafka producer, and we'll call this producer, equals, and by the way, for the Kafka producer, it needs to have two values right here in a little less than and greater than sign. So it's going to be a string. So what does that mean? Kafka producer string like this. That means that we want the key to be a string and the value to be a string. This is how Kafka does it. So K extends object and V extends object. And so K and V can be anything you want. But because we are producing strings right now, for key and value, we'll have string equals new Kafka producer. And I say the hint says Kafka producer string. So tab. And in it, it takes a properties as an argument, as you can see. So we'll type in properties. And here we go. We have created a Kafka producer, doing new Kafka producer, string properties. So far, so good, right? Now, the last step is to send data. So to send data, we'll do producer dot, and we'll do send. Now, the send function takes a producer record as an input. And so we need to create that producer record. So let's backtrack a little bit. And the first thing that you do is to create a producer record. So I'll go ahead and say producer record, KV, so string, and we'll call this record equals new producer record, tab. And if we look at the possibility of arguments to pass in it, you can see that there's a lot of arguments. And so we'll use a string topic, a string value, and for now we won't supply a key. So I will just say topic is first topic, and the value is going to be hello world. So now just a little bit of words on this. So as you can see in my editor, it says topic colon and then the first topic. This is not code. This is just my editor hinting at the fact that this first argument is for topic. Okay, but this is not code. This is not something I can write or delete or anything. Okay, so the code itself is first topic, second, and the value hello world. Okay, so if you look at producer record, you can see that it takes two arguments, a string topic and a v value. So this is it. So, okay, so let's get back to our code, which is right here. So again, this is not code. So this looks good. And just when you're in doubt, always copy and paste from the source code, okay? So now we have a producer record and we'll do producer.send the record. And now this should be all right. So how about we give this a go and try and see if anything works. For that purpose, I'm going to start a console consumer. So let me go here in my code and I'm going to say Kafka console consumer, bootstrap server 9092. The topic is first topic. And for this, I'll use my third application as the group ID. So as you can see right now, the console consumer doesn't give us anything, but that's normal because it reads from the end of the topic. So now let's go ahead and produce some data. And so for this, I'm going to click on the play button right here and click on run producer demo.main. So it's going to run. And as you can see, there's a lot of log and it says process finish with execute 0. So if you go to your consumer, well, we see nothing. So that's a bit of a surprise. We run the code, but we see nothing. And that's another mistake that people make. When you create a producer and you send data, this is asynchronous. Okay. And so because this is asynchronous, this is going to happen in the background. And so as this is executed, basically the program exits and the data is never sent. To wait for the data to be produced, you can do producer.flush, and this forces all the data to be produced. Or alternatively, because this sends the end of the program, we do producer.close. Okay, so flush data, and this is flush and close producer. So now if we run this code, we should start seeing the output we want. So let's run it. And now in the bottom, we can see that there is a closing the Kafka producer now. And if we go to our consumer, we should see hello world. So we have just programmed a very simple producer to produce data to Kafka. So congratulations, that's the first step, and I'll see you in the next lecture.